Hi, I'm Chrissy,
And I'm Jess.
and this is Financial
Financial progress.
Progress.
Whoop, whoop.
What?
All right. So last week we talked about my financial journey, how I got into debt, how I got out of debt. But this week we're going to talk about Chrissy and her financial journey. So, Chrissy, tell us about your financial journey and how you got into the debt.
So, getting into debt starts with my very first credit card. And it was to a store that I haven't seen around anymore, but it was to a store named Mandy's.
Oh,
And
Mandy's. Used to love
yes,
Mandy's.
and I love that store. And I tried to apply for credit cards. I was always getting denied. So I tried to apply for like a regular credit card that wasn't to a store. And I was always getting denied. I was 18 and I was just dying to build my credit. And I applied to Mandy's and then they finally approved me. And it was like a great moment in my life. I was so happy to get this credit card. And it was a $500 limit. And that's where it all started because I started buying things that I couldn't afford and I couldn't pay off every month. And looking back, I probably had the means to pay it off. I just didn't have the know-how or the discipline to do that.
Mhm.
I didn't have a plan for my money. I wasn't really budgeting, just making a minimum payments and not paying it off or anything like that. I got to a place where I did start paying off my credit cards or that credit card, and then I would just rebuild it back up, another balance, and then I would pay it off and then rebuild the balance and then pay it off. But it wasn't like a monthly thing. It was like, all right, why do I have this balance? I got a bonus, let me just pay it off. So it was more like that.
I think that's
So
a very lack of financial education, right? We don't
definitely.
know that when you have a credit card, you should pay it off in full every month. It's just like,
Yes.
oh, but it says $25. Let's just pay the $25, not realizing that interest rates are going to start into your new credit card.
Yes. So it was just I did not know what I was doing.
Mhm.
So I also I didn't go to college right out of high school, but I at one point thought I wanted to be a hairdresser. So I went to school to become a hairdresser. A year into the program, I realized I did not want to be a hairdresser professionally. I did enjoy doing hair, but I was already working in like a corporate world, working a regular Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, no weekends, no nights. And I got
Mhm.
spoiled by that whole thing. And I decided I did not want to work weekends or nights, which is predominantly when hairdressers work. So I decided to drop out, but I had all that debt from my student loans. I was just making minimum payments, not even worrying about trying to pay that off or tackle it in
Mhm.
any way. So that added to my debt. And then over the years, I got a few other credit cards, and this time I got like real credit cards, like Visa, MasterCard, and
Mhm.
like not a store card. And they kept increasing my limit, and I would just keep increasing my spending along with that limit
Mhm.
increase. And I just thought I was doing so well with money because I could pay all my bills on time. But I wasn't doing good with money because I had a ton of debt that I never sat down to actually add up and see what it amounted to. So I shared this in the first episode where my husband came home and he was wondering why we didn't have an emergency fund. And I said, well, because we spend everything that we make. We go out to eat and we do all sorts of things. Like any emergency that we had was always put on a credit card. We didn't have
Mhm.
an emergency savings. That wasn't even in our vocabulary at the time. It wasn't a know-how for us. We just
I was like, what was
always,
that?
yeah, we were always told like, oh yeah, credit cards are for emergencies, and like that's what I used it for. I was like, all right, here's an emergency. I mean, I did use it for my own personal pleasure, like buying clothes and things like that. But I also didn't realize that I was accumulating all of this debt because I never took the time to actually sit down and add it up because I thought I was financially okay because I was able to pay all my bills on time. Yeah, it wasn't until my husband came home and started talking about that I realized, all right, maybe we need to make a change. Like maybe we should have an emergency fund. And we were talking about it at church, about this Dave Ramsey guy and how he helps people get out of debt. And so I was like, all right, let me give it a shot. I started watching a ton of videos and just trying to figure out what I could learn for free because the $100 course sounded so insurmountable at the time. And I'm like, I can't afford to make this purchase. You know, at the time it was a purchase, but looking back, it was more of like an investment because we needed that. That was something
The price
that
has increased since then too.
Yes, I heard. I heard. But honestly, as far as price goes for a course, I still feel like it's one of the cheapest ones out there because some of the prices are just very high for courses. And that's something that I think about often if I ever decided to develop a course. I think I would want it to be a little more reasonable because of how insurmountable that $100 felt to me in the beginning. But no, actually, after sitting down and figuring out a budget, we did realize that we did have extra money, but we didn't realize that we did. So we were just spending without a plan. And it wasn't until we sat down and did our budget where we realized, wait, we can afford to pay for this course. We have the money. We just need to plan ahead for it and buy it. So that's what we did. And we purchased a DVD one. I think it was a little over $100 because we didn't want to do it in a group. I think it was out of embarrassment because we were just embarrassed of our financial situation. Yeah, we were really ashamed of it. And it really helped. It was a good foundation.
Yes.
So it really set the tone for where we wanted our finances to be at the time. There were a few things we didn't agree on with the Dave Ramsey program. We didn't agree that you should never have credit cards. And I also didn't agree like that you should completely stop investing. I feel like you should just keep invested at least in your 401k up to the match because that's free money that you're losing out on. So we didn't completely stop investing and we had our credit cards, but we just didn't use them until we got out of debt. That's when we started using them. And after we added up all our debt, let me just go back. After we added up all our debt, it amounted to $57,000 in debt. And through following Dave Ramsey's program, we ended up paying off the debt in 27 months. So we ended up paying off all that debt in 27 months, which was quite an accomplishment for us. We didn't think it was possible. You know, we did a mixture of like debt snowball and debt avalanche, which we didn't even know the term debt avalanche at the time, but debt snowball is you list all your balances from lowest to highest, and you start with the lowest, pay off that balance first, and then you roll any payments that you were making on that account to the next one, and then you just keep going into the highest balance. And then with the avalanche, you start with the highest interest rate first. So we did kind of a mixture of both. We didn't just fully follow, Dave Ramsey's plan, but we did Dave-ish, I would say.
Dave-ish, that's what they call it.
Yeah, a lot of people call it Dave-ish.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Still works.
And that's okay. Yes. Because I learned throughout this whole process that no one is the same. Everyone has a different mindset, different journey, different progress pieces that they have to make and put together for themselves. And it's all about what works best for you in your own unique situation. So what works for me might not work for someone else, and that's perfectly okay. And having that mindset is important in this industry, I feel like, because everyone has this mindset where like, I'm doing it the best way, or I'm doing it the best way. But some things scare the crap out of me when I hear people talk about, like, it sounds interesting. Like the whole infinite banking thing, that sounds like so interesting to me, but like, I don't know if I could do it. There's so much financial content out there.
What's infinite banking, since you brought it up?
So I have no idea. So my understanding of infinite banking is basically becoming your own bank, and doing so by getting whole life insurance. So that's my understanding.
I've never heard of this.
Yeah. Okay. So
So this
maybe,
is something
yeah,
we need
maybe
to
we'll
talk
have
about.
an expert come on later down the line to talk about infinite banking. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just a different way of doing things. And
Yeah.
it's something that I hear of and I'm like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And I want to learn more. But at the same time, I'm like, I need to just focus on what works best for me right now at this moment. And what I'm doing right now works. So I need to just focus on that. And later down the line, if I feel like I need a change, I can figure out other things because that's what
It's your journey.
yeah, it's my own
It's your
unique
journey.
journey. Yeah.
But it's funny that you said that because obviously when we first started, we were getting terms like what? Like higher yield savings, money market account. If you have a 401k, open up another IRA. And we're like, what did these words mean?
Yes.
Now we know what they mean, but
Yes.
it took, it took a lot of time. So it's good. So what do you feel like besides the debt snowball and doing your budget, what other methods worked for you?
So, what worked best for me, honestly, was before the month began, I would do my budget for the following month. And what I used to do was take every single transaction and plug it in when I first started. And then I would also pull out money for the following month, pull it out in cash. I no longer do that, but I used to pull out my money in cash to pay for the following month, for the groceries or anything like that. I feel like that really helped me or helped us stay on track was pulling money out of the envelopes to use for specific purposes. So I know in our last episode, we discussed sinking funds.
Yeah.
But I did use that process a lot and it helped. What I found what works best for me now is I still plan ahead for the following month and I make sure we have all the money that we need in the account for the following month to cover all our expenses. But we no longer use our debit card to cover the expenses. We're now using our credit card to cover a majority of our expenses. Anything that we're allowed to put on a credit card, we put on a credit card. So we're still, getting those credit card points, cash back, I should say. And then we take the money from our checking account and then we pay it off every month. So that's what we're doing now. So every month I just have enough in there to cover the following month. And then anything that's left over, that gets moved to whatever goal I'm working on. So if I'm working on paying off debt, that goes to pay off debt. If I'm working on savings goal, that goes to my savings. So I don't keep track of every single line item anymore, which is something I used to do with the envelope.
So I do want to do a disclaimer because credit cards, unless you are disciplined enough to pay off that credit card every month, then you can do that. But if you are not that disciplined, you're not ready yet.
I agree.
And that takes a process. So during my financial journey, I cut all my credit cards except one because I didn't have my emergency fund yet. So I was like, just in case, let me keep one. But I literally cut all of them. And I didn't use my credit cards the whole time on my financial journey. So for 4 years, I didn't use my credit cards. When I felt that I was comfortable, which it took time because let me tell you, the first time I used it, I had anxiety. I was like, no, I can't do this. I had 11 credit cards. I had to pay off all that debt. If I use this, I'm going to get in debt again. Like it was anxiety crazy, but it was also because of the system we were,
Oh, yes, definitely.
we came from, right? Because, and I don't want to keep bringing Dave Ramsey up because it was our foundation yet, but we don't do that anymore. But they're very strict on using credit cards. So my mindset at that time was just like, I can't use a credit card. It's not allowed. They're going to judge me for it, right? But I use it now for points and I get free hotels and get flights covered. So it's great. So my disclaimer for our audience is to make sure that you are disciplined. And if you don't have any debt, then you can test it out with something small or have like recurring bills on there. But yes, I just wanted to put that out there just in case.
That's a good disclaimer, yes. So yeah, when we were actively paying off our debt, we did not use our credit cards. It wasn't until we got out of debt that we started using the credit cards. I honestly think credit cards are much safer to use than debit cards.
Yes.
When you use a credit card, you're using the bank's money, but when you use your own debit card, you're using your own actual money. So like if something
Yes.
happens where your card gets stolen, your card number gets stolen and someone uses it, you're out that money until the bank can refund you for it. And sometimes that's a process that can take time.
Yes. Much
So
longer than when you report it to a credit card. You report it to a credit card, they give it back to you very quickly.
yes, most of the time, yes. And but it's not your own money that, it's just a balance in an account basically. So
Right.
it's, the bank's money. So they'll take the charge off and you'll be fine. But when it's your debit card tied to that, it's much more riskier. So I use credit cards for mostly everything now, but that's something that I didn't do until we were, out of that first time. Speaking of
Yes.
that, after we paid off all this debt, we were out of debt for like maybe a year or maybe a year and a half. And I was in school and I started accumulating debt again to get through my college degree.
Student
So my student
loans.
loans, yes. So I have currently $27,000 in student loans that I haven't actively started tackling yet. I just started paying them back in October 2023 when they started the repayment plan. And I just have been making minimum payments at this point. I haven't started tackling that. And I want to. I just haven't had the will to do it yet.
Do you really want to though? Like, do you really?
Not really. Not really. I don't want to, but I know I have to do it and I will. But right now it's not a priority for me.
I like avoid, like, I don't even like to include that loan, like student loan, like what? Like,
Yes. Yes. And then also a little after we paid off our debt, we lost someone who was a friend of the family. She was like a sister to us. And a little while after that, I had a dream that my husband died. And in my dream, I remember thinking like, he wanted to buy this Jeep, but I wouldn't let him because I didn't want to get into debt and we didn't have the money at the moment. And in that dream, I realized like I could have bought 10 Jeeps with the life insurance that I got from him
that he
dying,
left
that
you.
he
Yeah.
left me. And it just kind of changed my mindset on that whole thing. So I was open to him getting that car payment for the Jeep that he wanted because I realized like life is short. And what if he never gets to get that Jeep? What if he dies while we're saving up for this Jeep and he never gets it, So I was open to having a reasonable car payment. Like our car payment has never been over $300. So I'm open to that. We did buy my car in cash, which looking back, I kind of regret it a little bit because we paid $20,000 in cash for my car. And looking back, I'm like, maybe I should have just paid half and took that other half and invested it because we all know the power of compound interest. And I kind of regret putting that money into a vehicle. So I kind of wish I
think
would have
it depends.
I kind of wish I would have just put half and, paid off the rest of the half at a slower pace. But that's just something that I think of. It's not wrong to pay for a car in cash, as long as you have the means to do it. But looking back, I'm like, maybe I should have done it a different way, or maybe consulted like with a financial advisor to see what's the best way to optimize this money. But I was just thinking of, I didn't want a car payment. I need to pay off this car in cash.
I understand completely. So I always say like it depends because we had bought our car cash, but it was 9,000. And we didn't have to look back. We didn't have to wait for bills to come in or collect interest. But at the same time, we bought the car, we moved into our new home, and my other car broke down. And I was freaking out because I was like, we just put all our money into the house. We did have our like a little emergency fund. And now I had to go to the dealership and look for a car because I didn't have enough money to get a used one. And I was at the dealership and I could feel like the panic attack coming on because it was like I like me personally never financed a car before. And the car was 14,000 and the interest rate was almost 9%. So it depends on interest rate, right? If you
Definitely.
can get a higher interest investing, then I'll say, yeah, don't do the whole thing. But if you're getting a freaking 9% interest rate in a car, I like saw the first payment, like half of it went to the interest and then half went to the payment. I was like, I can't do this. And it was I actually think it was a 6-year car loan. And I decided to turn it into 1 year because it was that 9% interest rate. So it definitely depends. It depends on the circumstances. It depends. Like if you have a low interest rate, like if you could have got like 3%, 2% on that car, then yeah, I would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, go
Yes. At the
do
time,
half.
my husband's Jeep was under 2% interest rate.
Yeah.
So that was very reasonable. And he currently has a Bronco and traded the Jeep in, and then he got a Bronco. So we basically put half down for the Bronco, and his Bronco payment is $300. With that interest rate, it's more like 3%, but it's still
Okay.
reasonable.
It's
It's not
not
too
too crazy.
high. Yeah.
Yeah. And for people who don't have an idea of the market rates, like when you have an IRA, explain to people what's an IRA, because I mentioned it earlier and I did not explain what that was.
Was that the last episode or this episode? I don't remember. So, an IRA is an individual retirement account, and you can use this as a tax deduction if you take it into an IRA. It's similar to a 401k. So, your 401k will come out directly from your paycheck. So, you're not charged any taxes on it. But for the IRA, you might have to put like after tax money in there. But when you do your taxes, you'll get the adjustments that you need to get from that.
And in these retirement accounts, it's just like a bunch of company stocks that are in them. And the average rate of return is 10% in, depending on which one you choose and things like that. So that's why it's always, you have to be mindful. Interest rates. That's a whole other episode. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
Yeah. So that you have to pick your investments inside that investment vehicle that you choose. So after you open up the IRA, you have to also make sure that you pick your investments. And what I like to do is pick index funds. The index funds are passively managed, so they're just a little cheaper because they're just a bunch of like the top 500 companies in one stock. And, you just purchase one stock. You don't have to purchase little bits and pieces of each of the 500 individually. It's all in one for you. So you just pick it, and it's managed in a way that it changes if it needs to, but someone's not actively going in there and moving things around and picking different, stocks to put into the fund. So it's a little cheaper in expense. And that's something that I had to figure out as well, is that there's like expenses to all this, all these
and don't worry,
choices.
we apologize.
Yeah, we're probably getting way ahead of ourselves.
We apologize if this is too much information. But don't worry, we're gonna keep talking about it as we go, and so you guys can learn along the way.
Yes.
Do you have any key takeaways you want to share with anybody?
So, key takeaways, I would say invest as soon as you can. Start investing at a young age if possible. It's crazy to think that if you start saving like $100 at a young age, how it could grow to you could be a millionaire by the time you retire. So that's just $100 a month if you start at a young age. If you start doing it when you're a little older, sometimes you have to double that or even triple it, depending on what age you start investing, to have that same type of outcome. So starting early is the best option. Also, take advantage of Roth IRAs because they're remarkable, because you put money in after tax, and when you go to take it out in retirement, you don't have to pay tax on that money at that time. So it's nice to have different buckets. So have like your 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, different buckets to pull from when you retire. But another episode for another time.
I know.
But still, key takeaways, things I wish I would have done sooner that I didn't do.
But since you did bring the investing sooner, a Roth IRA is for anyone who's already working. So if you're start working at the age of 15, yes, you can open up a Roth IRA.
Yes, and there's no age restrictions on that. So if your child has a modeling career, you could put money in there for that child, and it's a really remarkable account.
If you have your own business and if you have your own business, and you can hire your kids to work for your business and put that money in a Roth IRA. So good stuff. I mean, we'll elaborate more.
Yes.
But I know it came out of your story, so I'm like trying to catch all the good stuff from your financial
Yes.
journey to make sure that they understand it and make sure we elaborate on it.
Yes. So I would also piggyback on your key takeaway, which was having an emergency fund that has been valuable for us in so many ways. We no longer have to worry if something happens, and
Yes.
the money's there. We don't have to touch those credit cards anymore for those emergency expenses. The money's right there, and we can pull it out and use it as we need to.
I think credit card as well came from your story, even mine, because I had 11 of them, as takeaways, because it's so important that if you're in debt, to make sure you're not using your cards until you're out of debt completely, until you're comfortable using it. And my recommendation for credit cards is making sure you get ones that will give you rewards points. So when you are ready to use credit cards, there's credit cards that would say, hey, spend $3,000 in 3 months and you'll get 70,000 points. And that $3,000 is going to come from the bills you already pay. You're going to use your credit card for that, pay it, get your 70,000 points, and that usually equals about $700, and you can use that for traveling and things like that. And that's where kind of travel hacking comes into play, is how to use credit card points to pay for travel, which we could talk about in the future.
Yeah. So I do want to say this, that the first time when we were in debt, because now we're in a whole different debt situation, but the first time we were in debt, it wasn't conscious debt. It was debt that we just found ourselves in because we made bad choices. But the debt that I'm in now it was purpose ridden. I purposely know what I'm getting myself into, and I had the discipline now to be able to use those credit cards. So I don't feel like everyone is across the board should not use their credit cards if they're in debt. If you have the discipline to pay them off every month, then I think it's okay to use. If you're still spending on your credit cards for things that you didn't budget for, that's a problem, and then you should not use credit cards. But if you already have that willpower and that discipline to pay off the credit card in full every month, then I don't see anything wrong about using a credit card. But yeah, definitely for me, when I first was in debt, I did not want to use credit cards. But this time I'm in debt, but I'm still using my credit cards. But I'm paying them off every single month. Yes.
Yes. Pay them off every single month. Why do we pay them off every single month? Because we want to pay that stinking interest.
Yeah.
Right?
So we don't pay any interest, but we reap all the rewards with the points and the cashback rewards. So yes, it's we get the best of both worlds, get to have that security of not using our debit cards. And we also get to reap some benefits as well by getting points or by getting cash back.
Yes. Anything else you want to share with the audience?
So every little step that you take is important, and every little choice that you make, it helps you on your journey. So don't feel like you have to make all these changes at once. It all comes with time, but just do a little bit here and a little bit there. This has been, you said 7 years we've been doing this, and I didn't even realize it's been that long, but that's insane to think about. 7 years. Wow. So 7 years of paying attention to my personal finance, and I still make mistakes. There are some times when something pops up and I'm like, I didn't budget for that. But I also learned to add a miscellaneous section of my budget in case things happen like that. So give yourself grace. Don't feel like you have to get it all together in one shot. It takes time, and just think of every new month as a new start and a new way to figure things out for yourself. And
as long as you're starting,
yes,
and you have that motivation going, you're good to go.
Yes. So I think that's it.
So yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your financial journey with us, and keep an eye out for the next episodes coming, because we're just going to give you all the deets of what helped us along our financial journey.
All right. See ya. See ya next week.
Bye.